Will the Western nations ever stop interfering in Africa? Not easily, but after being thrown out and told by African leaders to leave, some Western nations finally showed self-respect. After being kicked out of many African nations, France has now decided to end birth citizenship in the African territory of Mayotte. But why was it under French rule? And does France accept that it is leaving Mayotte because of the disrespect done to it by African nations? Not quite. France presented other issues, suggesting that this was the reason behind its decision. But the reality is clear. And what's that? Let's find out. France is ending birth citizenship in its African territory of Mayotte. Mayotte is an overseas department and region of France. It is located in the Indian Ocean between Madagascar and the eastern African coast. Despite its geographical location near Africa, Mayotte is an integral part of France, and its residents are French citizens. Mayotte's status as an overseas department means it is fully integrated into French laws and institutions, with representation in the French National Assembly and Senate. Mayotte also participates in the European Union, and the euro is used as its currency. While geographically situated near Africa, Mayotte is politically and administratively considered a French territory. But why is France ending birth citizenship in this territory? It says France is doing so to address immigration challenges from the nearby Comoro Islands. The proposed constitutional amendment seeks to terminate the long-standing practice of automatically granting French citizenship to individuals born in Mayotte. The decision is driven by concerns raised by French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin, who emphasizes the strain on essential services, such as healthcare, housing, and education, due to immigration from the impoverished Comoro Islands. The measure aims to make Mayotte less appealing to potential immigrants and reduce the pressure on vital services. What is the historical background of Mayotte, and how did it become an overseas department and region of France? Mayotte, situated in the Indian Ocean between Madagascar and the eastern African coast, has a historical background dating back to 1841, when France established control over the archipelago, officially classifying it as part of the Coros Archipelago Protectorate. Despite neighboring islands seeking independence, Mayotte chose to remain under French jurisdiction. In 1974, a pivotal referendum solidified Mayotte's status as an overseas department and region of France. This status entails full integration into French laws, representation in the French National Assembly and Senate, participation in the European Union, and using the euro as its currency. Mayotte's journey from a protectorate to an overseas department reflects its historical ties with France and its decision to maintain a close relationship with the European nation. But what citizenship laws were previously in place in Mayotte, and how did they align with those of mainland France? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Until now, Mayotte has followed French law regarding citizenship, mirroring the practice on the mainland. Individuals born in Mayotte were automatically granted French citizenship, irrespective of their parents' nationality. This system aligned with the broader French principle where children born on French soil, whether on the mainland or in its overseas territories, would acquire French citizenship by default. Mayotte's citizenship laws mirrored this approach, reinforcing its integration into the French legal framework. However, the proposed constitutional amendment seeks to change this long-standing tradition in Mayotte by ending birth citizenship for immigrants, introducing a significant shift in the territory's approach to nationality. But let's dive into some details. What reasons are cited for the proposed amendment, particularly concerning immigration? And how is it expected to impact the services in Mayotte? The primary reason cited for the proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte is the issue of immigration, particularly from the nearby impoverished Comoro Islands. The proposed amendment in Mayotte, aiming to terminate birth citizenship, primarily seeks to control immigration from the nearby Comoros archipelago. This decision stems from the belief that the current use solely birthright citizenship policy acts as an attraction for illegal immigration. The French government aims to deter individuals from the Comoros who enter Mayotte with the intent of giving birth to secure their parents' status by revoking this policy. French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin has explained that the amendment addresses the strain on essential services, including healthcare, housing, and education, caused by the influx of immigrants from the Comoro Islands. The existing practice of granting automatic French citizenship at birth to individuals born in Mayotte has led to an increased number of immigrants settling in France. Darmanin argues that ending birth citizenship will make Mayotte less attractive to potential immigrants, reducing the burden on essential services. The proposed amendment is a measure to manage immigration-related challenges and maintain a balance in providing crucial public services in Mayotte. What are the controversies and opposition surrounding the proposed amendment, and why are residents of Mayotte protesting? The announcement of the proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte has sparked protests and opposition, particularly among the residents. The dissatisfaction expressed by the residents is rooted in deteriorating living conditions and a lack of basic amenities. Experts argue that ending birth citizenship may not fully address the immigration issues and challenges Mayotte faces. The political spectrum is divided, with the left opposing the amendment, citing concerns about violating the principle of universality. At the same time, the far right supports it as a solution to immigration-related problems. Residents' protests in Mayotte reflect a broader discontent with the perceived shortcomings in addressing their immediate concerns, such as living conditions, and the proposed amendment is seen as deepening these issues. The opposition highlights the situation's complexity, where citizenship policy is entwined with broader socio-economic challenges the territory faces. The controversy highlights the need for a comprehensive approach beyond citizenship measures to address the multifaceted issues confronting Mayotte's residents. How does the political spectrum in France view the proposed constitutional change in Mayotte? And what concerns do both the left and the far right express? The political spectrum in France exhibits diverse views on the proposed constitutional change in Mayotte. The left opposes the amendment, raising concerns about potential violations of the principle of universality. Critics from this political standpoint argue that altering birth citizenship may infringe upon fundamental principles, reflecting broader ideological concerns about equality and inclusivity. On the other hand, the far right in France supports the proposed constitutional change, viewing it as a viable solution to immigration-related problems. This political faction sees the amendment as a means to address the strain on essential services caused by immigration from the nearby Comoro Islands. The far right's endorsement of the amendment aligns with its stance on stricter immigration controls and policies, advocating for measures perceived to safeguard national resources and cultural identity. How have the French citizens reacted to the proposed amendment, and what potential precedents are left-wing leaders concerned about for mainland France? The proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte has evoked mixed reactions among French citizens. While the far right welcomes the initiative as a solution to immigration-related challenges, left-wing leaders express concerns about potential precedents affecting mainland France. The left is apprehensive about the broader implications for the principle of universality, fearing that changes in Mayotte could set precedents for alterations in citizenship laws on the mainland. Left-wing leaders worry that such amendments might lead to a shift away from the inclusive principles of French citizenship, impacting the rights and status of individuals born in France. French citizens' reactions highlight the issue's sensitivity, with differing perspectives on the balance between managing immigration challenges and upholding fundamental principles of citizenship. As the debate unfolds, the concerns expressed by left-wing leaders indicate a broader societal apprehension about the potential repercussions of altering citizenship laws, emphasizing the significance of this proposed change beyond the specific context of Mayotte. But the amendment must be changed. What constitutional process does the proposed amendment in Mayotte need to undergo, and when is its implementation expected? The proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte is expected to undergo a constitutional process that requires approval from both houses of the French Parliament and public endorsement. This process involves thorough scrutiny and deliberation by lawmakers to assess the amendment's compatibility with existing constitutional principles. Once Parliament approves, the amendment may also require public endorsement, emphasizing the democratic aspect of the decision. As for the timeline, the proposed constitutional change in Mayotte is anticipated to be implemented before the summer. This suggests a relatively prompt turnaround for the amendment to become effective, pending the completion of the necessary legislative and public approval processes. The time frame highlights the significance of addressing the immigration-related challenges in Mayotte with a sense of urgency, as reflected in the government's proposed schedule for the amendment's implementation. This decision will have some reactions. How will the proposed amendment affect the relationship between France and its overseas territories? And what broader discussions does it reflect on citizenship and immigration? The proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte can potentially impact the relationship between France and its overseas territories by signaling a shift in France's approach to citizenship in these regions. The amendment, if enacted, could represent a departure from the long-standing practice of automatically granting French citizenship at birth in Mayotte. This change prompts discussions and re-evaluations of citizenship within the context of France's overseas territories, potentially influencing policies and relationships with other territories. Moreover, the broader discussions surrounding the proposed amendment reflect ongoing debates on citizenship and immigration in France. The controversy surrounding the amendment highlights the complexities and challenges associated with managing immigration, maintaining public services, and upholding fundamental principles of citizenship. The debates in Mayotte mirror broader discussions within French society regarding the balance between inclusivity and the need for measures to address immigration-related concerns. As such, the proposed amendment serves as a microcosm of larger discussions on citizenship, immigration policies, and the evolving dynamics between France and its various territories. What are the potential consequences of the proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte for the residents and their unique cultural identity within the French jurisdiction? As the debate over the proposed constitutional amendment in Mayotte continues, the potential consequences for the residents are complicated. One significant aspect is the impact on the residents' unique cultural identity within the French jurisdiction. By ending birth citizenship, the proposed change will influence how residents perceive their connection to France and the broader implications for their cultural identity within the French framework. If the amendment is enacted, residents in Mayotte will experience shifts in their legal status and rights, which could affect their sense of belonging and identity within the French nation. The alteration in citizenship laws may prompt residents to re-evaluate their relationship with the French state. It may contribute to a redefinition of their cultural identity within the context of the evolving legal landscape. Additionally, the potential consequences extend to the social fabric of Mayotte, as debates surrounding citizenship often intertwine with broader societal discussions on inclusion and exclusion. Based on the outcome of the amendment, the residents' unique cultural identity within the French jurisdiction may face challenges or adaptations, shaping the dynamics of their coexistence within the French legal and cultural framework. How will all this impact Africa? The decision to terminate birth citizenship in Mayotte is poised to yield several consequences for Africa. The primary objective of the amendment is to control immigration from the Comoros to Mayotte. This move will likely impact migration patterns between the Comoros and Mayotte, and potentially affect other African territories with connections to France. Experts perceive the termination of birth citizenship in Mayotte as indicative of France distancing itself from its African territories. This could strain the relations between France and African countries, especially those with historical ties to France. But why is France distancing itself? We will address this question later in the video. The cessation of birth citizenship in Mayotte could be interpreted as a response to the perceived shortcomings in the democratization process in the Comoros. Such a decision may have broader implications for democratization efforts in other African nations, possibly signaling a shift towards more authoritarian policies. The decision to terminate birth citizenship in Mayotte may have economic repercussions for the Comoros. Potentially, it would reduce remittances from Comorian migrants residing in Mayotte, which could exacerbate the existing economic challenges faced by the Comoros. So, why is France distancing from Africa? It is because Africa started distancing first. So let's understand why Africa is distancing itself from France. The historical context plays a pivotal role in understanding the reason for Africa's distancing from France. The legacy of colonialism has cast a long shadow over the relationship, with African nations striving for autonomy and sovereignty after gaining independence. The gradual process of distancing reflects the diverse paths each African country has taken in asserting its identity and charting its course. France's continued presence in Africa, whether through military cooperation, intelligence sharing, or economic support, has been scrutinized. A growing sentiment among African leaders perceives France's involvement as a form of neo-colonialism, prompting calls for greater autonomy. The push for independence is rooted in the desire to break free from historical power dynamics and forge a path that aligns with the aspirations of each nation. While France has traditionally been a significant economic partner for many African countries, there has been a noticeable shift in recent years. The emergence of China as a major investor in Africa has prompted some nations to diversify their economic partnerships. This economic realignment is a strategic move, reflecting a desire to reduce dependency and explore new avenues for growth and development. Language and cultural ties have long been pillars of the relationship between France and Africa. However, as African countries continue to develop their own cultural identities, there is a growing sense of distance from France's cultural influence. This evolution reflects a broader trend of cultural self-discovery and a desire to shape narratives independently of historical legacies. The election of new leaders in France and across Africa introduces an element of change in foreign policy. French President Emmanuel Macron's emphasis on control without citizenship suggests a recalibration of France's approach to its African territories. Leadership changes can be instrumental in shaping the future direction of diplomatic relations. Has this encouraged France to distance itself from Africa? 2. France is adjusting its approach in response to changing global geopolitical dynamics. The rise of new powers, such as China and Russia, influenced France's strategic priorities and relationships. France responds to the shifting economic landscape as African nations diversify their economic partnerships. The emergence of China as a major investor in Africa could have prompted France to reassess its economic engagements on the continent. African nations' push for greater autonomy and sovereignty contributed to France's reevaluation of its role. The perception of France's involvement as neo-colonialism prompted a recalibration of diplomatic and political strategies. Africa thus has forced France to move away from Africa. Let's understand that with some examples. How can nations force one another to distance themselves? In 2021, France's decision to close military bases in Mali, Chad, and Niger marked a significant shift in security dynamics. This move was interpreted as a response to mounting anti-French sentiment in the region, reflecting a broader desire among African nations for greater autonomy in handling their security matters. The closure of these bases signaled a reassessment of France's military presence in Africa and a recognition of the importance of allowing African nations to take a more prominent role in their security affairs. As of 2023, reports have suggested that some African leaders expressed concerns about perceived French interference in their internal affairs. This resistance indicates a push for greater independence in political and diplomatic decision-making. The desire to limit external influence in domestic matters reflects a growing sentiment among African nations to shape their political destinies without external intervention. The ongoing effort by African countries to diversify their economic partnerships beyond France is a strategic move driven by a desire for greater economic independence and diversification. The emergence of China as a major investor in the region has provided African nations with alternative economic avenues. This economic diversification is a response to changing global economic dynamics and a deliberate effort to reduce dependency on traditional economic ties with France. Developing distinct cultural identities in African countries has contributed to a growing sense of distance from France's cultural influence. Initiatives promoting African languages, arts, and cultural practices, and establishing independent cultural institutions reflect a desire for cultural autonomy. This cultural independence underscores a broader trend of self-discovery and the assertion of unique cultural narratives separate from historical legacies. France's decision to terminate birthright citizenship, seemingly attributed to reasons other than geopolitical tensions, is underpinned by a broader and underlying issue: strained relations between France and Africa. While official statements may cite various motivations for policy changes, there is a growing perception that the real impetus behind such decisions lies in the evolving dynamics and potential conflicts between France and African nations. Rather than opting to navigate through potential diplomatic tensions or perceived insults from African nations, France seems to be choosing a strategic recalibration by disengaging from certain aspects of its presence in African territories. The examples, including the closure of military bases and reported concerns about French interference in internal affairs, point towards a multifaceted re-evaluation of the historical ties and power dynamics between France and Africa. This strategic withdrawal from African territories can be interpreted as a response to avoid exacerbating existing tensions. Rather than maintaining a contentious presence, France is choosing to leave simply. Do you think France is finding its way out? Are they not capable of exploiting anymore? Why do you think the West is giving up? Let us know in the comment section. Will this be good for Africa? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.